How I feel? Blessed. What I want?
Get back slow. I love the way she rock her hips. I love the way she move it, shake it on me. When she cry for hips, the shawty is the winner. You can tell that shawty's no beginner. She's confident. I love the way she move it.
YouTube, what's going on? It's Juan Gotti here with another Washington Commanders video, and in today's video I am joined by a very special guest. I'm just gonna go ahead and let him take it over and introduce himself. I'm pretty sure a lot of you already know who he is, but go ahead and take the floor and introduce yourself, my man.
Hello, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for the invite, Juan. It's funny because we just talked last night on our show, and I was very impressed by how you coming on your intellect and knowledge of the team. And I'm excited that we're just going to be able to kick back here tonight, just talk about our favorite team, and it's going to be very easy to be able to do that.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So again, I appreciate you coming on, and I'm pretty sure everyone knows who you are, but if not, I want to get it correct. Is it 1/2 or 1/3 of the Burgundy Zone that we rocking with? Because I see 3 people in the picture, but I'm used to 2 faces.
1/3.
1/3.
Reed is hard to get onto the show a lot. We all work, obviously, so It's hard to get us all in the same sphere, I guess you could say, for an hour at a time. We all have families and stuff that we have to do on the weekends and everything, so the way that the time lays out, sometimes one of us might not be there.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Okay, cool. I just wanted to be sure, and give everyone their proper flowers. So we have the Burgundy Zone joining today, and yesterday, as you heard him, spoke. I was on their show, and I'm a person that loves giving someone their flowers. I reached out to them, very welcoming and allowing me to come on their platform, and I appreciate you for returning the favor. So similar to what you did with me yesterday, let's just talk about the start of your show, you guys' show. How did that go about, and what made you get interested in this kind of platform of YouTube here?
Well, YouTube, it didn't come on for a long time. I was actually kind of resentful towards it at first, but one of my close friends was like, no, dude, you need to get on this. But when we first started out, I started out with the Sports Junkies, and it was a bunch of my buddies and I, and we would go for about 12 o'clock on a Sunday. We would go live on Facebook, and we would break down each NFL matchup. And what we do is we'd pick fantasy winners and losers on who you really look forward to that day to do well for you. Things kind of just fell off a little bit, and I wanted to do my own thing. And so I said, you know what, I'm not going to do overall NFL. I'm going to go towards my team. Yeah. And I had some guys in mind, buddies of mine, that I knew were perfect for this opportunity. The first person I thought of was Reed, who you did not get to meet yesterday, which is probably one of the funniest people I've ever met. And if you talk to him for 10 minutes, you know who I'm talking about. Reed kind of fell off for a little bit, and I started working with Hall. And Hall was working with me every day. He was on with me with the Drunkies. But I had to wait a little bit with Hall because I knew it would create some relationship issues. So after Reed fell off, I was like, Hall, we ride in the truck with each other every day. We have great conversations. Why don't you just join the show? Yeah. So Hall comes on, and then Reed comes back, and then there the trio is kind of put together. That was back in 2017. Okay. When we first started, we were only using an iPad. I borrowed my brother's iPad. I was building our camera situation with books, making a bookshelf out of it, holding it up with a bookshelf. And it was a lot of fun doing it, and we had kind of grown over the years. And so at first we were primarily only doing Facebook, and then we were doing primarily audio. It wasn't until about 2019 we strictly started doing pure video, and then that's when, in 21 is when we really started going to YouTube hardcore. And we won the best fan podcast for the Commanders back then, 2021, in the same weekend that my son was born. So that was one heck of a weekend that was for me. But it's been a blessing and an honor to be able to have that kind of award, and I don't hold it lightly in any way. It's always been a pleasure to do this because we just have fun. Yeah. Like, I didn't go out looking for people who already had a big stature in the community and stuff like that. I just wanted to talk with my buddies. Yeah. And one of the things that we said to each other was our dream was to be able to sit down and talk to a current Washington player in person and interview them. And we were able to do that. In fact, in 2021, at draft night, we talked to Jonathan Allen, Kendall Fuller, Logan Thomas, we got to talk to as well. But the best interview of that night was Fred Smoot. That guy is absolutely amazing. One of the really great guy and funny.
Yeah, I mean, Man, first of all, congratulations on that. I know that had to be a fantastic week for you, man. So congratulations on that. And I kind of just got hip to you guys about, like I said yesterday, about a year or two, and I've been subscribed ever since, tuning in. So great work that you three are putting on, man. And let's go ahead and transition to my next question before we start talking about the current state of our team. How did you become a Washington Commanders fan or Washington Redskins fan? I'm interested in knowing that.
Family. My grandfather, my mom's side, both my grandparents are deaf. But my grandfather, he won a gold medal for basketball in the Deaf Olympics.
Okay.
Huge sport. I loved football. My mom said as soon as I was born, he was putting a football in my hands. You can see pictures of me at 1 to 2 years old in a Redskins jacket. So I was born into this. Over in my kind of younger years, I kind of went away from it. And that was purely because I had a weakness of being in a public school in the D.C. area. And, you know, it's hard being a Washington fan because I'm Wizards, I'm Nats, obviously Redskins, Commanders, and then the Caps. I'm a little bit of a fan of. And so it was kind of hard growing up with that. But I honestly, during that time that I separated a little bit, probably in my high school years, I really realized something. That as much as I would not like to claim that pride for my own, I did not get any satisfaction from any other team or anything like that.
Yeah.
And so I kind of realized at that point, this is love. I'm not going anywhere. This is my freaking team, dude. So live or die. If we're going to be in the mud, that's fine. I'm still going to praise them, still going to love them, still going to show up and talk about them. And so it was a really cool moment for me, kind of just realizing where home was.
Yeah, I mean, and honestly, your story is probably, I would say, 80% of our fan base, maybe even 90% of our fan base being just, this is what we grew up around. Similar to you, I am from the area, and that's all my family was, Washington Redskins fans. So it was no reason for me to go against the grain. And as you spoke to, you know, not having any satisfaction from watching other teams, I share that too. Like, I love NFL football. Do not get me wrong. I can watch any game, any given week. But as far as like cheering and that adrenaline, that feeling and satisfaction you get from winning, I don't share that with any other team. Like, quickly, just a little story. Like, I try to watch some Ravens games because they may be on CBS while we're on Fox, and if we're on commercial break, I'll flip to their game. They win, but Ravens football just seems so boring to me. Like, I just never could get into it. So that kind of gives you a glimpse on which I understand where you're coming from. I don't get no satisfaction from watching any other team.
And I was a lot like you because my parents, I have a step grandfather, and he played and coached at Virginia Tech football. He was a defensive lineman and a defensive line coach. And so as a young man, I was able to go to Lane Stadium, see the Hokies play a lot. So that was during that time where I was really like kind of separated from Washington. I was more so at Virginia Tech. So when Michael Vick was drafted to the Atlanta Falcons, I have a Vick jersey upstairs. Absolutely huge fan of Michael Vick. And it was during that time that I kind of realized there's nothing really there for me. This is all about Washington. As much as I not want to accept it, it's freaking real.
Yeah, definitely. So, man, what a story. Again, sounds like probably 90% of our fan base, because let's be real, how many new people are becoming Washington fans in the past? Maybe now we're changing and we'll probably end up winning some things in the future. We get more fans. But our hardcore fans are like us too. So let's transition now to the state of the franchise. Okay. What a big overhaul, man. I was away during the winter time, and I didn't make any videos on the newer stuff that had happened, which it was absolutely crushing me because, I mean, you can only imagine, like you said, you've been doing it since like 2017. 2019 for me every single day, and to be away from it that long, not making no videos, it was absolutely killing me, especially during a time like this. But let's start it all the way back at the top. So the Washington Commanders finished 4-13 on the year. Absolutely horrible of a season. I didn't expect nothing like that to happen with you. And to be honest with you, with the hype of Sam Howell and the way we won that preseason game and we're storming the field like we just won the Super Bowl, man, I just thought we were going to have a really good year. Absolutely went the opposite way. And the Washington Commanders ended up parting ways with Ron Rivera. So let's start there for you. Were you all in on that? And then once we decided to fire Ron Rivera, what were some of the coaching candidates that you wanted? And was Dan Quinn a part of that?
I did think that we were going to put up more of a fight before the season. Looking at how this defense was made up, having Montez Sweat there and everybody else. I'm a huge fan of Cameron Curl. He's been a guest on our show. I'm good friends with his dad. He served our country. Absolutely love that man. As much as everyone likes to give him grief, he is a fantastic human being and a very good father of his son. But look, that season, last season, that was hard, man. It was brutal because, like, when that Chicago Bears game really took the soul out of you, because you're sitting there wondering what the heck happened. The year before, we watched Benjamin St-Juste on that last touchdown drive, or that they throw to the, I think it was not DJ Moore, somebody else in the end zone, but Benjamin St-Juste knocks that incompletion. Washington wins the game. Benjamin St-Juste says in the post game, he says, we knew that Justin Fields would not go to, like, if he didn't have his first or second read, that we were going to win that matchup. And then look at that a year later with what we happened against Chicago on Thursday night. They absolutely blew the doors off us, right? And that was just kind of a really what the heck moment for me, because what happened? Because it's not like a lot of turnover happened on this roster, Juan. And so that was the big confusing and gut-wrenching part, because you're sitting here saying, is this on purpose? Like, what is going on here? But ultimately, it was for the best thing possible. Because going into the season, I said this, look, if Sam Howell comes out and this team wins 10 games to go to the playoffs, then we have our quarterback of the future. But if they lose a bunch of games, then we're in a position to get a very good quarterback that could be a franchise looking forward that we don't have to worry about anymore. Because as a person who's been on Twitter for many years, a lot of the fan base has been clamoring for one position and one position only, and rightfully so. So the fact that we finally have that piece to actually give the support, have some hope in a future of, that's what's most important to me of anything.
Yeah, I definitely want to agree with you on that sense, because the years prior to us finally just either going to be really good or really bad, we will be mediocre, 7-10, 7-9, and that got old pretty quickly, because you're not good enough to make the playoffs, but you're not good enough to get in a position to where you can draft a franchise player or, you know, a cornerstone. And this year we finally was. So that's why for me, once the season, I think, like, I want to say, yeah, maybe that Bears game, you're right, was that week 5, Thursday night, when we got absolutely destroyed. That's when I was like, all right, I'm going to start to check out, because I'm starting to see how this season is transpiring. Like, obviously, I watched every game, I streamed every game, but after that performance, you let Justin Fields and DJ Moore just come into your house and absolutely destroy you. I remember a lot of people wanted Ron Rivera gone after that game, and I wasn't opposed to it. I really wasn't. Like, after that, I was like, you know what? Get him out of here. What are we waiting for?
Juan, they traded him for a 2025 conditional 6th-round pick. It wasn't even a 6th-round pick in this draft. It was in 2025.
Right.
And that dude blew the doors off this defense. As much as it was a disrespectful trade for Justin Fields, I think it just goes to show the state of the team at that time and what we were kind of dealing with.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. And like I said, for me, I kind of just was at the point where it was like, all right, let's just pack it in on a season. I mean, it was still kind of early on, and I was like, okay, maybe, you know, they can turn around, because Sam Howell was really the hope that I was having left for this team. And once they destroyed him, I was just like, yeah, it's wraps for this year. And then after that, you just seen the season go downhill, losing to the Giants twice, and then, I mean, I'm recapping the schedule right now in front of me. Majority of our games, and I'm pretty sure you already know this off the top of your head, we weren't even close. Like, it was no contest. You got a 45-10, a 45-15. Like, after that week 4 game versus the Eagles, I don't even think Washington was really close in any game. You know, obviously besides the Patriots game that they won, but I'm talking about all the defeats. We looked horrible, man. So, obviously, ownership, Josh Harris, they had to make a change. And they waited throughout the whole season, which, like you spoke to, which most likely was probably the smartest thing to do, because you didn't want no one to come in here and give this team a spark, because it was no point. So they ended up going to 4-13, and the hiring of a new head coach started. Before we get to a head coach, though, we had to get a general manager. Adam Peters was the guy that ended up getting the job. Was he the person that you wanted? If not, what were some of the other guys that you were interested to, and how do you feel about Adam Peters after free agency, hiring of a coach, and a draft?
First off, my one favorite was Ian Cunningham, who is the second in command with Chicago. This is a guy that came from the Ravens background, has a lot of experience in that sort of breadth for Ozzie Newsome. And anybody that is near Ozzie Newsome for more than 5 years, I want to be able to talk to and get to know a little bit. Did not know all that much about Adam Peters. But after the hiring, figuring out who Adam Peters was and his stature and his kind of talk around the league, how Adam Lynch, when he became general manager, he needed help, he said. So he reached out to Denver to John Elway and said, hey, man, I want this guy. So they brought him over. And his history, not only with Denver, but going back to New England, goes to show you how much of a pedigree he has with his peers. And then you see what they were able to build in San Francisco. So the fact that this guy was the number one option for a lot of teams, and he said no to New York. He said no to another team. Was it Carolina? Maybe I think he said no to. But this is something that the league coveted. And we talked earlier about the kind of walking away, looking away from Washington for a period of time. You would have never gotten this level of hire under Snyder. And so the fact that we were able to pick that guy goes to show you the change in the overall organization. And I was all on board. I didn't answer your question before about the head coach that I wanted and everything, but I was all over McDonald. I really like that idea. Ben Johnson, I was not a huge fan of. I did not think that he was going to be able to come into this situation and be able to build what he needed. I felt that he was very good with what was given to him. And because coming with Jared Goff as a proven vet who coming in, not like a deer in a headlight, so to speak. And that's what my concern was, because looking for me, I know Washington is a different animal than any other team. And we don't live in a perfect world. And if we did, then we would have won a Super Bowl under Dan Snyder. So if you're going to have to deal with that kind of situation where bumps in the road, I need somebody who's well tenured, somebody who knows and has been down low before. And so I wasn't about the Ben Johnson hire. I did not think he was going to do well with a rookie quarterback. I was much more so of the head coach, the OC down in Houston. Oh my goodness! And now I forget his name.
Bobby
He
Sloan.
used to work. Yeah, Bobby Sloan. He used to work with PFF, and so I really liked that idea. I thought that was a fantastic one to go with. But ultimately, we went with Dan Quinn. But then seeing the coaching staff that Dan Quinn built, and then seeing that how pissed off he was that he was fired from Atlanta, and he went back to the drawing board. He was even calling a good friend of our show, Logan Paulson, saying, "What can I do to be a better head coach?" That's what you want. You want somebody who's been through the muck, somebody who's been and has been kicked before down, and knowing that I can do better this time around. Knowing what you're walking into, knowing that he went to Salisbury University and played football there, knowing the kind of area here, the passion of the fan base. I can't be happier with what they have built here. Having Ken Norton be the linebackers coach, having Joe Witt Jr., being able to pry him away from Dallas, getting some of their best guys to get him away from, that was just honestly the perfect culmination for Washington fans altogether. Because I truly do feel that playoff loss that they suffered to Green Bay, that was a little kiss up for us from Dan Quinn, basically saying, screw Dallas. And I think that's going to be what we're going to be looking forward to in the near future, because I think that Dan Quinn and company were probably disrespected by Jerry Jones. I think they gave a lot of credit to Mike McCarthy and company, and Dan Quinn was kind of pissed off about that. So he said, you know what? I'm going to go do my own thing then. And he's doing it. And Josh Harris and company made the right decision. Adam Peters made the right decision, because we see what they've built. You see what Dan Quinn and his attitude, what he brings in. Joe Witt talking about, we are going to bring violence every time that we hit. That's something that I have been screaming about ever since I've been doing this pod, is that I want some attitude, man. I want some badasses on this team. I want some dudes out there just willing to throw punches, because I learned football in high school from a guy who played defensive line in Maryland. And one of the quotes that I always stuck with me is, on the football field, you can do stuff and get away with violent stuff on the football field that you would get locked up for on the street. And that's the way that I learned how to play football. And that's the kind of football that I want to see my football team playing with. And Dan Quinn, Joe Witt Jr. and company, that's what they're bringing to the table. And so I can't be more happy with the situation that we have in the best GM in the league, Having Dan Quinn, Joe Witt Jr. with a chip on their shoulder, they're pissed off, and they turned over the roster in a pretty good fashion, in a pretty fast way as well, bringing some badasses on here. I know we're not getting to the draft yet, but that's just the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. You said it all. Honestly speaking, even starting from with Bobby Slowick, that's the guy that I wanted, because I was so against another defensive coordinator, defensive background rather, as a head coach. I was like, man, let me get some offense in here to pair with my young quarterback, offensive mind to pair with my young quarterback, and I was all in on Bobby Slowick. But obviously, like I told you, I went away. And I knew Dan Quinn was a target for us prior to me leaving. That's why I made a couple videos on it. But I'll be lying to you, man, if I told you Dan Quinn was on my radar as a potential guy that I wanted here in Washington. One, because I felt at the moment last season, obviously that changed now, but I thought he was comfortable in Dallas. And I was like, man, he's one of the best defensive coordinators in football. You know, I didn't see him wanting to leave Dallas. I didn't know if he genuinely wanted another shot at a head coach, but it turns out he wanted it. And he in his press conference, he said, if I was to get another opportunity, I would do this, and this differently. And I can't be nothing more but supportive for a guy that is self-aware and knowing where he went wrong. It's easy to blame everything else around you. He could have easily been like, oh, this went wrong in Atlanta. Not me. No, he started with himself, and that's where it starts. Your head coach being able to accept accountability and not putting it on anybody else. And then you okay, you can go ahead. Got something to add?
But sorry, Juan. Sorry, but you're absolutely right. Because the same thing about Dan Quinn when he first got hired is, even before he got hired, I said, I love the idea. I like the idea of Dan Quinn if he brings Micah Parsons with him. I love that idea. But my first thought when we hired him was, it is a head scratcher because right now we have the second overall pick. What are you going to do offensively? If we are going to go quarterback number 2, can Dan Quinn get somebody in here that really moves the needle long term? Yeah, you could bring in a Greg Norman. You could bring in these other guys, older guys. But does that really give you the confidence with a rookie quarterback to say that this guy can get the most out of him, and he's not right away? A young, innovative coach. It didn't move the needle for me. Seeing that Cliff Kingsbury bowed out from Vegas, and we were able to pry him away, that was the best case scenario for Washington, in my personal opinion. And that was the cherry on top.
I mean, honestly, like I said, we kind of share some of the same similarities, and like I said, with the hiring of Dan Quinn. You also talked about the offensive coordinator position with Cliff Kingsbury coming over too. Let's actually continue with the defensive side of the ball. So we get Dan Quinn, Bobby Witt Jr. Or Joe Witt Jr. I don't know why I keep calling him Bobby. I watch too much baseball too. I'm sorry, but I've been calling him Bobby for so long. But Joe Witt Jr. He's a part of that. But I remember when, like you said, if Dan was coming, he had to come with Micah Parsons. You want to know what I said? I said, when I first found out that we hired Dan Quinn, I said, all right, Micah Parsons and Al Hurst. I wanted those two to come with him because I'm like, Micah Parsons, he loves Dan Quinn. You know what I'm saying? And Al Harris is an absolute dog coaching up those DBs. This was prior to Cam Curl leaving, so I'm already thinking, like, similar to you, Mr. Greg Curl came on my show. Awesome dude. So I'm thinking, okay, I absolutely can take Cam Curl, Benjamin St. Juice to the next level. Emmanuel Forbes, because Al Hurst is an absolute dog. I understand he's with the Cowboys and stuff like that, but you got to call out good coaching when you see it. So I'm thinking, all right, if Dan's gonna be here, they gotta absolutely come with him for me to be all right. Turns out that doesn't happen, and the Micah Parsons thing was probably unrealistic, but the Al Hurst thing I thought could have happened. That didn't happen, but you know what happened? We brought in Joe Witt Jr. With him. So talking about Joe Witt Jr., listening to his press conference, I don't know if you get the same kind of vibe, but he seems a little bit pissed off that it took him so long to finally get a shot. So after 18 seasons in the NFL, he finally gets a job as a defensive coordinator. How do you feel about that? And what do you think Joe Witt Jr., you already spoke to, ferociousness and intensity and viciousness, but add a little bit more on what do you think Joe Witt Jr. could bring to this defense as finally being the head man of a unit?
He's exactly what this team needs. And everything, it's funny because as much as I want, it's a cop-out thing to say, everything, every single word, every statement, every sentence that Joe Witt has talked, it goes and hits in my soul because that is what I am talking about, dude. I want to inflict pain. I want to create chaos and violence. I want the Dothraki tribe as all 11 guys on defense. That's what I want, and that's what Joe Witt is essentially bringing to this defense. And the funny thing is, when you look at Dallas over the years, I would be complaining like, okay, they lost Trayvon Diggs. They're going to fall off now. They're not going to have the picks anymore. No, there's Deron Bland. Javon Curse, he's hurt. He's not going to come back and be great. No, he's still being productive. And I kept saying, Dallas does not deserve to be happy. They don't deserve this defense. They are getting very happy with this. And so I cannot explain more how happy I am that those two both are here. If I had to choose between Al Harris and Joe Witt Jr., I'd go with Joe Witt Jr. He talked about, he's a pissed off individual. He has worked his ass off to get to this opportunity. He was very put off by the question from the reporter in this press conference saying, how dare you kind of question if I'm ready for this? I've been ready for this since 2013. And that's the kind of guy that you want. Somebody who is confident coming into this position and saying, dude, yes, I'm ready because I've been ready for over 10 years. And I'm going to light a fire under everybody here. And obviously they had a plan for it, bringing in Bobby Wagner, Frankie Louvu, and Jeremy Chin off bat. We know what they're bringing to this defense, and that's exactly what we need. We need to bring some intensity here. And as much as Ron Rivera and Jack Del Rio like to talk about they were defensive-minded and everything like that, they were kind of timid to an extent. And no disrespect to them, because obviously Ron Rivera went through a very traumatic situation. He had cancer, obviously. People change after going through that, and obviously he survived and overcame it. But this is a different animal here. Like you said, Joe Witt Jr. has a chip on his shoulder. And honestly, at this point, I am concerned that Joe Witt Jr. is going to turn this defense around in such a quick manner that somebody might be offering him a head coaching job after this season.
Yeah, I mean, and look, that's always the scare of it. But at the same time, it's also like, hey, I'm happy, because we're finally in a position to where we're even a team like San Francisco, where we may end up building our own coaching tree, and you want people to pluck away from. I mean, you really don't as fans, but you want that eventual just revolving door in a good way, where you're grooming this guy because this guy's gonna end up getting a gig somewhere else as the head coach. Like, as a fan, it sucks because you want him to stay, but also it's like, man, look at what Washington's building, and we can finally be in a position soon where we're the team that is getting, asking to get interviewed of our coaches, instead of being the ones every year, every 4 years, having to pluck someone off of someone else's coaching staff. We're now the go-to, as we mentioned yesterday on the show where we talked about the VR. We talked about us being the trendsetters now, as you mentioned yesterday. So that can be the new vibe, and that's something that I want to get used to. And Bobby, Joe, I might got to do some push-ups every time I say his name wrong. But Joe, every time Joe may end up being that starter for something for us. You know what I'm saying? So I'm happy. I'm excited for Joe Witt Jr. and this defense. We go out and get Bobby Wagner. It's still crazy to me that we have Bobby Wagner. I don't care if he's 33 years old and he's probably on the tail end of his career, but the fact that we can say we have Bobby Wagner on our team is absolutely insane. We go out and get Jeremy Chin, Dorrance Armstrong, and a bunch of other guys to come in and create this unit. So now that we've kind of talked about this defense, we can now transition a little bit to the offensive side of the ball. Cliff Kingsbury ended up getting the job, and you seemed a little bit excited about that. As you said, we got him away from Las Vegas. What it is about Cliff Kingsbury that you think he can do for this offense, let's say Eric Bieniemy didn't do, or someone else in the past, Scott Turner, Jay Gruden, didn't do for this team, and also the young fella Jaden Daniels?
Be an adult. The one thing about Cliff Kingsbury that really stands out to me is we interviewed Sam Fortier from the Washington Post, and he talked about he wanted to get to know Cliff Kingsbury when he was at USC. I think when he was in Arizona, I think it was, or no, maybe Texas Tech. But he showed up at 3:50, and at 4:01, Cliff Kingsbury's rolling into the parking lot, and Sam gets out of his car and approaches him, and Cliff Kingsbury's like, "What are you doing here?" Sam's like, "Well, I want to get to know you, a little bit, right?" Cliff Kingsbury is a very hard worker, but when you talk about the Johnny Manziels, the Kyler Murrays, the Patrick Mahomes, they all will tell you he did not force me to be a certain quarterback. He saw me as a quarterback and built a team around me, so to speak. And when I'm looking at somebody where we have a defensive minded head coach, I want an offensive minded head coach that's going to not a head coach. I want an offensive coordinator that's going to work with what you have. You have to be adaptable. You have to be an organism. The Bruce Lee quote, "Be water," and that's what Cliff Kingsbury is. You have a cup, he's going to fill the cup. You need a jar, he's going to fill the jar. And that's what is exciting for me, because it seems like a lot of these OCs have come in here, even Jay Gruden himself, they kind of did that. They kind of forced guys to try to be a certain way. And the best of the league, a lot of really high productive guys were coming in saying, "I really like this guy. He has gone through his own stuff. He got let go of Arizona, obviously, goes to USC, works under Riley out there, and learns a little bit more, just like Dan Quinn did." So it's almost like a perfect storm between it all, where you have an offensive coordinator that works hard, well tenured, has a very good resume, and has the pedigree with the best quarterbacks in the league, where you feel very confident looking forward. And not only is it you're going to get turnover on defense, but you know that if you have to leave the keys in his hand, he's going to drive the car just fine. Cliff brings here, obviously, he's not the perfect thing in the world, but just like Terry McLaurin, is that essentially what we need? We just need a hard worker and somebody who cares, that's going to go in every day and try to be better. And I think that's what Cliff Kingsbury is going to do here. So I'm very excited just about the state of the team, but let alone the offense. I think somebody like Terry McLaurin deserves it.
Yeah, I mean, and you spoke to Cliff Kingsbury's resume. I think a lot of things that people look too much into when someone has a head coaching tenure that doesn't end the way that they hoped, is they look too much into everything that happened that final year or the year prior, that you can start seeing things falling off. But with Cliff Kingsbury, that a lot of people kind of tend to forget, he had Kyler Murray playing at an MVP level. Like, let's not forget, this team at a point started off 6-0, 7-0. I think it was 8-0, and then they lost to the Packers that game, and then it spiraled down. They ended up making it to the playoffs, but the Rams got them out. So they had created some type of some type of winning culture there in Arizona, and Cliff Kingsbury was at the head of that. But then again, Kyler Murray, things happened with him, injury, Call of Duty, whatever you want to say went wrong. Things started to spiral out of control there in Arizona, and Cliff Kingsbury, obviously being the head coach, you always got to be the first one to go when you're the head coach. So he ends up getting fired, goes back to college, and then shortly back, he is back after a while, he's back in the NFL. And similar to what we talked about Dan Quinn, with him finally getting another shot, it may not necessarily be another head coaching gig for Cliff Kingsbury, but for him to get another opportunity in the NFL, he now can know what it is that he can do better, and he probably is more hungry to maybe potentially get that head coaching shot again. And another thing that he testified to in his press conference is that now he can strictly just focus on offense. Being a head coach is so much that you have to focus on, but now he could just worry about offense. So to get off of Cliff, to close the conversation on Cliff Kingsbury, specifically, what do you think the kind of noise and the kind of music, or whatever you want to call it, him and Jaden Daniels can create, not only this year, but potentially for the future? What do you see from that point?
Well, at first, you have to talk about Jaden Daniels' work ethic. And I think that's very indicative, because what happened with Kyler Murray and his contract extension, or his big, massive contract he got, they put the little fine print in there saying, you got to put in the work hours, right? You got to go study and do all that. That's right now, from what we've heard, that's not going to be a concern with Jaden Daniels. I've heard from many people that playing under Brian Kelly at LSU is hard. It's very difficult. He forced you to do some things, and they're not easy on you, so to speak. So this is a hardworking young man, and we've talked about the VR, the Oculus, the Cognilyze software that they use. He was getting 200 to 300 extra snaps a week, and that's him on his volunteering his time to do that because he wants to get better. So Cliff Kingsbury by himself, being that kind of hardworking individual, He's now being added and combined with a quarterback with that same type of mentality. And I don't think Jane Daniels is going to come here with fluff. I think that he's coming in knowing that he wants to be better, that he doesn't want to flame out here very quickly. Because like Cliff Kingsbury in Arizona, a lot of time head coaches get fired because their quarterback isn't elite, because they don't win a Super Bowl. And so you do get a lot of talent to leave that really shouldn't. And I think this is a very good situation altogether, because you have a quarterback that not only can utilize his arm, hit deep, have a sniper-like accuracy to guys. Yes, he had very good wide receivers on the outside and Brian Thomas and Malik Neighbors. But who's to say that if Jaden Daniels didn't go to LSU, that Brian Thomas and Malik Neighbors would be going in the top 20 in the draft? And that's my argument, is that this is I'm really in the realm of saying this guy's good because of this guy's good because of this. The recipe worked. And so getting talent on the field is all that matters, and being able to make that talent work together is probably the hardest part. And that's where Cliff Kingsbury comes in with his work ethic. And we've heard from the previous quarterbacks that he's going to be able to mold everything around them. And so that's why I have confidence that this offense is going to be better than they were last year. I don't think that we're going to be having to wait till week 17 to get Terry McLaurin over 1,000 yards. I think that Terry's going to be able to operate and do everything that he wants, specifically because of the threat of Jaden Daniels' legs. When you think back to Pierre Garçon in the 2012 year, yes, he did fantastic. They were also one of the leading rushing teams in the NFL at that time. The threat of the legs is what made everything so easy for that passing game. And now just couple that with Jahan Dotson and Terry McLaurin, just having that threat of the legs as well. Sky's the limit for this offense. I think we're in a very good situation. I think the floor is high. Ultimately, it's how fast can they be productive? And I have the utmost confidence that they'll be able to get these guys humming in a very short period of time.
I'll be real with you, man. You struck a nostalgic chord when you brought up Pierre Garçon and that 2012 magical run. I mean, I just think about Aldrick Robinson and obviously Alfred Morris, obviously the little celebration, man. That year, that was my peak year. And I know that sounds crazy for a lot of our older fan base out there that's actually witnessed 3 Super Bowls. Sorry, I didn't witness greatness like that, but that's my peak year right there, man. That was an absolutely fun year. 2015.
You're privileged, Juan.
2015 was a close second, but yeah. So, to close out the show, I appreciate you again for coming on. This is 1/3 of the Burgundy Zone, taking time out of his day. Didn't have to, but very kind of him to come on the show. To close it out, let me get your overall thoughts on the draft. As minicamp is about to start, at least rookie minicamp and minicamp follows for everyone. Your overall thoughts on the draft. Did it go the way you thought it was going to go? And are there any concerns that you have remaining for the Washington Commanders team right now?
Ultimately, did not go the way I thought it would. The Jaden Daniels pick, I thought at the last minute I was kind of thinking of Drake May, but early on in the draft process, I do film breakdowns for the draft all throughout the build-up to the draft. And early on in January, when I did the breakdown, Jaden Daniels, he was my number 2 quarterback. And specifically because of what the threat of his legs and what he did with his arm. Just showing you the accuracy, having the knowledge to be able to put the ball in certain situations, being able to hit that deep ball in the seams and everything. He just had a different gear. The excitement, the explosion that you really look for. With Drake May, I did not like the accuracy issues. It reminded me a lot of Donovan McNabb later on in his career here in Washington when he was throwing those 10-yard hitch routes to wide receivers' feet for incomplete passes. I saw that a lot, and I didn't like it at all. But what rubbed me the wrong way was just the frame, because we saw with RG3, and that's the big concern with Jaden Daniels looking forward. But I do think that Jaden Daniels is going to learn from the best and be able to slide a little bit more. So my biggest concern with this team and the draft looking forward is Jaden Daniels' health. And I trust that Josh Harris and company are going to do everything possible to support this young man to make sure that he is healthy and he is going to be able to be with us long term. The draft altogether, going with Johnny Newton at 36, I'll tell you, it was kind of a head scratcher at first. But after watching his film this guy is absolutely an animal. Every single play, he's disrupting things. I gave him the nickname John McClane from Die Hard. because he is just disrupting everything the enemy wants to do. He has a vicious swim move. You'll see when you watch his film, you'll see guys falling, offensive linemen, 300-pound men trying to block him, falling to their hands and their knees because of how fast his hands are. He also is very crucial with his rip move. It's very powerful, and he has the burst to get through with that rip move and have that bend to get around on guard. Illinois did a great job of isolating him on guard and making sure that he had that one-on-one matchup. Now, couple that with having Jonathan Allen, Deron Payne, and Dorrance Armstrong. Nobody can double team him. The one concern that you have with Johnny Newton is maybe his pad level when he does off the snap. He does come off a little bit high, and there's goal line situations that can limit him and lose a little bit of depth there. But everything he does, he's high motor. He's pissed off that he got selected in the second round. He knows he should have been selected in the top 10. I'm looking at Johnny Newton. I think that everyone is kind of subconsciously looking at Johnny Newton like our first-round pick. It's like we have beaten the quarterback conversation to death into the ground, and we're kind of looking at this thing. Oh, Johnny Newton, that's your starter, right? So I think that we got 2 first-rounders in Johnny Newton and Jaden Daniels. And then getting Mike Samuelsville, who is the playmaker, the captain of that defense, where he played wide receiver the first 3 years at Michigan, transferred and switches to defensive back, is the captain of the best defense in college football, is communicating with his fellow DBs pre-snap on what to do. Well, you got to think about how hard that is. This is the top of the college football of Division I, playing wide receiver and going to corner 1 year and being able to call out guys in communication. Have you seen Jamin Davis ever do that? He's been in the league for what, 2 or 3 years? You haven't seen him once do it because it's difficult. This guy, Mike Samuelsville, on top of his mind, on top of what he's able to do as a DB, having very good speed, very good hips, having the instincts, he's a playmaker. Having 6 interceptions, whenever he has a ball in his hands, it's a concern for the offense because he can take it back 6 with his wide receiver background. So I think that what they have done here by getting those first 3 picks is adding some pieces on this team that are long-term, that are blue chippers. And that's the one thing that a lot of the scouts, a lot of people, national people will say, you need more blue chippers to really hold yourself into a playoff team. And that's what we have now on. And I'm really excited for it. And when we traded back to the 50s, I knew that's when we were taking a tight end. And Ben Sinnott was my second tight end in this draft. I wholeheartedly believe that. Sam Laporta was my pick last season. I really like Sam Laporta coming out. He was actually my 17th round keeper in my one fantasy league. My brother-in-law was like, dude, what did you see in Sam Laporta? Like, first off, you got to understand, I spent a lot of time on these pre-draft film breakdowns, and I absolutely loved what Sam Laporta brought to the table. And that's what Ben Sinnott is for me this year. He's somebody almost like Chris Cooley-esque, where he is very flexible, very athletic. He's a playmaker with the ball in his hands, but also a very good blocker. He's better than a lot of the other guys in the draft. Theo Johnson, Jatavion Sanders, I did not like at all. I thought he was a lackadaisical blocker, didn't really care all that much. We got the second best tight end in the draft, and we got him in the, 3rd round? And so I'm looking at this and say we put some pieces together here to help Jaden Daniels. And then you're talking about Luke McCaffrey, Brandon Coleman. I know we all wanted more tackle. My one tackle that I liked in this draft was Christian Jones out of Texas. Ultimately, we were not able to get him. But watching Brandon Coleman, he reminds me a lot of Jordan Morgan, who was projected to go in the high of the second rounds. I think he went in the first, if I'm not mistaken. But what I saw from Brandon Coleman, very choppy feet, lunged a lot, did get beat a heck of a whole lot. But then I learned that he actually played through injury. And one thing I've always said, Juan, is I want my offensive linemen to have like a bent finger. I want them to be injured, but still out there punching people in the face. And that's what Brandon Coleman is bringing to you right now. There's somebody who battled through injury, and when you go back and watch his 2023 film, like I did when you go against Georgia in the national championship game, did a very good job for them. Even played right tackle for them for 4 snaps. Did pretty well. Did give up 1 sack against Mikael Williams, who is going to be a top 10 pick in next year's draft. Is a very ferocious edge rusher who's able to knock his hands down and get out to the quarterback. But the athleticism of Brandon Coleman is probably the separator here. And ultimately, what I see is a lot of high-end athletes, and Cliff Kingsbury's going to be attacking the boundaries, attacking the edges on the outside with Jaden Daniels, and having Ben Sinnott being a very good blocker on the edges, on the boundaries. This is a very good recipe for success for this team. I think they had a plan going into this draft. They executed that plan. And if you have Bill Belichick and Nick Saban parading your second selection in the second round, I think you hit a home run. You did a great freaking job because those guys, they know DB. And I think and then Jordan McGee getting selected, Ken Norton's guy. Ken Norton was very excited to have him. I think they did an incredible job here. I don't want to get ahead of myself because, anything can happen. But at this moment in time, and you feel that the momentum is building. So ultimately, after the draft one, I can't be happy.
Yeah, man. I mean, what an absolute great breakdown right there. Going into depth with pretty much every pick that we've had and kind of silenced a little bit of the concerns that a lot of fans shares, and me too, with a guy like Brandon Coleman. Initially when we selected Brandon Coleman, I heard a lot of people talking about how he is a guard. And then I'm like, okay, I kind of see where they're coming from, and that's initially what my report was. Like, all right, maybe we got another Brandon Sheriff, another Sam Cosmi. When are we going to find this tackle of the future? Then after looking at it and after a lot of other people talking to me and we're having conversation, I'm like, you know what? I see why Adam Peters got this guy. And he could potentially be our tackle. What's a good thing about it is we don't have to rush him. Like I said yesterday, I'm fine with Cornelius Lucas being, there right now. Especially after the video I made today, I'm not even sure if there's any free agent tackles that I want. So it looks like Cole Luke and maybe even B. Coleman might even get some shine here early on. But
you also got to remember that June 1st cuts are going to come around. And so there might be somebody available that comes up that they could pluck away from somebody. But I agree with you about Cornelius Lucas that after last season, I truly felt that bringing Cornelius Lucas back was more of a need than bringing back Leno. And no disrespect to Leno. He battled his ass off for us. But like I talked about with you before, I like intensity. I like violence. And Leno played like a pillow.
Yeah, I mean, that was funny right there. Again, nothing against Charles Leno. Great guy. Did some great things for Washington and the community, but you're not wrong at all. Cornelius Lucas, for me, I even wanted him to start at left tackle last year over Charles Leno. That's just the honest truth. But yeah, man. Whoa, this has been a great episode. Honestly, I'm glad I got to chop it up with you. And like you mentioned, like this whole kind of feeling of this show tonight, the future is bright. That's essentially what we're trying to get across. The message that we want everyone to hear is the future of the Washington Commanders is finally treading upward. So I appreciate you, my man, for taking time out your night, for joining me here on the show to talk about our Washington Commanders. Let everyone know where they can find your social medias, you guys' channels and stuff like that, and shout out anything that you have coming up.
Of course, you can find us at any audio podcast platform, Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts. You can find us there. I'm not uploading to Facebook anymore after they hit us with some copyright infringement on our intro video that we've had out for years. I'm done with you guys. I'm tired of all these games. But you can also find us on YouTube, of course. You just search for The Burgundy Zone. On Twitter, you can find me at The Burgundy Zone. My co-host, Hall, you can find him at TBZ Money Mike 301. Then our other co-host, Mike Reed, is Mike Reed 2156 on Twitter. Instagram, same thing, The Burgundy Zone. You can find us there. I like to upload film breakdowns up into the draft process. You can go back, and my pinned tweet is Ben Standig put out a poll after the 2018 draft saying who's the best, most who's going to be the most pound for pound best value pick for Washington. He put Montez Sweat, he put Dwayne Haskins, Kelvin Harmon, and there was one more. He didn't even supply Terry McLaurin. So I quote tweeted it and said Terry McLaurin. And that was the day after the draft where Terry was selected. And it wasn't because of what I saw Terry on film. It wasn't because I had heard what people had said about Terry. It was specifically how Terry's draft call went and what his teammates and coaches said about him. Because in my heart and my mind, I knew that's what this team needed. And that I'm really happy with where we are because I felt like somebody like Terry McLaurin deserves it, Juan. So everybody, thank you for the opportunity, Juan, for bringing me on here. But be happy, be excited. I know we all like to be getting on each other about these quarterback selections and all that. but this is a great time. Snyder let us go. We have a fantastic coaching staff, a Hall of Fame level coaching staff. We have one of the best GMs in the NFL at this moment. We have a new VR software that all of our quarterbacks can utilize. The future is bright, my friend, so be happy for it. Juan, I can't thank you enough for joining us on our show last night. I'm sorry, my co-hosts are busy, man, but we will do this again in the future. I'm sorry I didn't let you talk all that much. It's kind of how it does when I come with Washington, you know what I mean? But the future's bright. I appreciate the invite and being able to speak with you and your audience. Hopefully this was entertaining for them as much as it is. I hate hearing my own voice, but this was a lot of fun, Juan. I want to be able to do it again.
Yes, sir. I appreciate you for coming on. And again, look, hey, don't ever apologize for getting excited about our Washington Commanders, man. We had a great conversation, and I see how animated you are about it. So, again, I appreciate you for even sharing that insight for us here tonight. And, again, if you guys don't know who these wonderful gentlemen are, I know it's only one of them, but it's three of them. Burgundy Zone, all social medias, the Burgundy Zone link will be down below in the description. Please go ahead and show those brothers some love over there, as they do a great job with covering our Washington Commanders. That being said, as always, it's me, your boy Juan Gotti. Like, comment, subscribe. Hail to the Washington Commanders. We're on the road to 7,000 subscribers. Please help me get there as soon as possible. Let the world know, after my hiatus, your man Juan Gotti is back in full effect. Y'all have a blessed one. Stay safe. Peace.
Never gave up one day. Ballin' like I'm Deshaun, throw the bomb, G. That's IG, my jersey never seen a laundry.